Hey folks, welcome back to Only Best Fantasy Novels. My name is Robin, and today we're talking about The Butcher's Masquerade, the fifth book in the Dungeon Crawl Carol series by Dinniman. And this is the most intense installment to date. Like, I've enjoyed these books tremendously with each one that I've read. They each keep escalating things in new and exciting and fascinating ways, and this book is no exception. Like, this was just a rip-roaring adventure from start to finish, even as it has parts that felt like they really slowed things down and made us really stop and think for a bit. So what is this particular book about? In this one, we're on the 6th floor of the dungeon, and this is where the dungeon opens up to intergalactic tourists. Tourists in the sense of characters who can come into the dungeon and literally hunt and kill the crawlers who have made it to this floor, essentially farming them for items and these kind of things, in preparation for the faction wars that keeps getting teased so much throughout this series so far. As if the homicidal hunters specifically targeting crawlers wasn't bad enough, they still have the challenges of the dungeon itself to deal with, such as a forest full of abusing and extreme dangers, elite NPC story arcs, these kind of things. Like, the list just goes on and on at this point. But that's pretty much just par for the course at this point. And Carl did make a promise to the galaxy as a whole in the previous book, so you better believe he's going to go out there and kill. So yeah, like, this book just, like I said, this series just escalates with every book, and this one I felt that more than any other book in the series, mainly because at this point it's very clear what the overarching goal Carl has is where it comes to this series, and I didn't really expect things to escalate and come so much to the forefront so fast as it did with this book. Like, things really went ham overall here, just in terms of what Carl does. And first and foremost, of course, we have that's entirely surrounding the hunters and the storylines that play out around them. Like, the way that the viewers of the crawl, the way that they view these hunters as opposed to the actual surviving members of the human species at this point, and the way that the deaths of the hunters resonate as opposed to the deaths of the crawlers. Like, it really drives home just how sickening and twisted this entire situation is. Like, with all the zaniness and the fun and the high octane action adventure and the humorous dialogue and all of that, it's very easy to forget that this is, like, when you really stop and think about the situation that Carl and Donut are, and just the rest of the human crawlers are in. It's a very horrific thing that they're going through at its core, but it's extremely horrific. And that difference in the way that the deaths of hunters is treated as opposed to the deaths of humans, it really drives home that point in some of the best ways possible. So there's that. The other cool thing about this book that for me felt like both positive and negative was just the multiple subplots that went on in here. At this point, like, there's quite a few brands in the fire, as it were, where it comes to different details of the story that are being played out in the background and the forefront and to the sides and whatever. And sometimes it felt like Matt Dinniman, he had trouble maintaining that high octane energy that made these books so fun so far. There are parts where the book, like, it felt like it slowed down significantly. When I say significantly, it's not that it stayed slowed down for very long, but they were significant enough that it was quite jarring given the pace of the previous books, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because a lot of this is very much setting the stage and just laying some emotional groundwork and these kind of things. So depending on your traction with all of that, it can be good, it can be bad. I suspect it's one of those things that's really going to be really specific. For me, it was okay. It kind of broke the intensity of the reading experience, even as it somehow maintained compared to the previous books, which I know doesn't really make sense, but it is what it is. So all that said, like, don't get me wrong, this book still manages to hit all the right notes. Everything I love about this series, it just continues to carry that forward and escalate it in all the best ways possible. Like, everything I enjoyed about this series is here, and somehow also feels amplified because, of course, we have the hilarious dialogue. Everything I've spoken about this series to date, it's all here. The only thing I think would maybe be the imagination. It wasn't quite as over the top as some of the previous books. That there are some very interesting bits here and there, but this one in particular, it just didn't feel, it felt a bit more stock than some of the previous books, which is, once again, not necessarily a bad thing, because at this point, like, this series has so much baggage that this book also very much builds on that. It leverages a lot of what's been built to this point to give us this story. So it not, well, my feeling that it's not necessarily as imaginative as some of the previous books isn't necessarily a bad thing, because one of the goals of this book was very clearly to deal with some of the things that have been building towards this point. And of course, there's the finale, which is very interesting, to put it mildly, given Princess Donut's proclivities and the whole point of that ending. But yeah, another book, another entry that I just had an absolute blast with at the end of the day, and one that, as soon as I finished reading it, I just kept rolling straight into the next one. At this point, when I was reading this one, I was just binging these books back to back. So you better believe, as soon as I finish this one, I dive right into the next one. So yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on the Butcher's Masquerade. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.